What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the Watching Now podcast over here on CouchSoup, where we are diving into every new episode of Halo Season 2. And after a banger of an episode last week, we've got a little bit of a slower episode this week, but still keeping things up, still pretty interesting. We got lots to get into. So let's introduce the cast for today. Reporting for duty, we have Tom.
Howdy, friends.
Howdy indeed. And we have Dan.
What's up, Master Chief?
What's up, Master Chief? Welcome, Spartans, and welcome to you guys at home. Guys, we're at episode 5 already. We are officially past the halfway point of season 2, and things are getting pretty interesting. Episode 5, a little bit of a slower episode, but I mean, that kind of goes without saying after the crazy action-packed, emotionally fueled episode that we got last week. So I think we kind of needed a bit of a breather. We needed a little bit of time to just chill out. So we are going to dive straight into this week's episode breakdown. No waiting, no beating around the bush. Let's just get straight into our sit rep for episode 5. Alrighties. Starting the episode, we pick up literally right where we left off last week, where we got to see Vannak die.
Again.
And everything that happened with the Arbiter that came in. Chief and Arbiter had their first big encounter last week, and we pick up right away. And the first thing is that Chief is hurt, and he's hurt bad. The first thing I thought, did he really get hurt that badly? I mean, he did get blasted super close range, but it didn't look like he was hurt that bad. But right at the beginning of the episode, he seems shell shocked, and he's he can barely move. And then he kind of I think Soren helps him up, and he's like, "Get off me! I can still fight."
Mm-hmm. I mean, if you look at just how other people have been destroyed by plasma weapons throughout the show, regular people get ripped to pieces by plasma weapons, and Chief took a blast right to the back.
He tanked it like a
champ.
He was
with no armor, so.
Yeah, he just took it right, and it was like, blah.
Yeah, so I would imagine he's pretty hurt from that.
Yeah, but he did survive. It shows how tough as nails Master Chief is. But it was pretty interesting how it opened up, and it seemed like how are they going to get out of it? I remember thinking how did they get out of there? What's going to happen? I was trying to think is Kai going to show up? Is something going to happen? With how do they survive this? And then there was a really interesting scene, which I don't know what you guys thought of this, but Halsey's kind of in a corner, trying to protect herself and whatever. And then she looks up and she says, "Look at them, they're coming back." And then we see a whole bunch of ships that, to me, it looked like they were leaving, they were escaping, other ships that were escaping. Who would she be referring to about people? We know who eventually comes to save them, but who would Halsey be referring to as people that were coming back? That just felt a bit weird. Who would she be talking about?
Yeah, it seems a little counterintuitive now in retrospect.
Yeah.
I think maybe she saw it differently, because maybe they work landing to get more people to get out, maybe.
Could be. Coming back to get more survivors.
Yeah, I'd have to rewatch it to see which direction they're going.
There was someone who eventually came back. We kind of see no one's coming back for them, and then Soren, just the freaking amazing
comic
Soren. Relief character that he is. He's so good. I love Soren, dude. He's like, "That all you got?" And then we get the
freaking hammer brute drops out of the sky, because that's literally every butt pucker moment in playing Halo when you get that hammer brute coming charging at you. You're like, "Oh shit!"
Yeah, and Soren eats those words. And again, I'm thinking how do they survive this? And then bam, 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 shots fired, and we see a ship, and Lyra's in the ship. So Quan and Lyra have arrived on Reach. So obviously that's they knew where they were going to try and find Soren, but they arrive and they save everyone. They take out the big brute and everything, and
Killer Quan.
Killer Quan is back. She was on that railgun, a freaking badass as well.
The minigun, machine gun thing with Jiggy.
And that was something we kind of foreshadowed a couple of episodes ago, where we were like, "Oh, are Quan and Lara are going to show up on Reach, and join everybody?" And there they are, and they kind of saved the day, because pretty sure everybody would have died from that brute otherwise.
Massively saved the day. Yeah, I have some thoughts and things on Lyra and Quan showing up, but I'll save that for a little bit later. But anyway, they get the ship right there, and they open up the little drop pad thingy, and everyone starts getting on. And then Riz looks back, and she's like, oh, "We can't leave without Vannak." Obviously, Vannak he's toast, he's dead. But she wants to get his body, which is a really interesting thing, which they touch on later as well. About like, I mean, Vannak's dead. What's the point of going back to save him? And Riz goes for Vannak, showing she's got like more empathy and everything. And at this point, I was like, dude, you're not going to kill Riz now as well, are you?
I definitely had some feelings going into that scene because I was initially taking this as we're just going to throw Riz back in there to kill her off too and just kill both of them at once. And as that scene was playing out, I was like, okay, yep, she's going to die. She's going to die. But then when they did the cut back to her actually carrying Vannak out, I was like, oh, it's not just her going off to her death. She's actually bringing his body back. So that, to me, actually struck a different chord of like, okay, I see what they're doing here. Now they're kind of like, they're going a different direction. Instead of just Vannak's dead, they're leaving him behind, moving on. We're actually getting a little bit more respect for, their comrades and what it meant for them to be in the team together, which I'm actually really glad that they did that. And at first, I'm really glad they didn't just kill off Riz and just be like, bang, bang. Okay, Silver Team's basically done at this point.
I had a weird suspicion back in my head that Vannak wasn't dead. Because, like, I know, like, explosion,
needle her to the heart.
Yeah, but, like, the way, like, she went back to carry him, like, oh, they're going to do some weird thing. How Halsey's going, like, oh, I need the gel foam. Stab. You better.
You're good.
Get going, soldier.
Or it does like Halo, where you just like you revive as long as you're near a teammate. You just respawn.
just pops up.
She just crouches near him for like 5 seconds, and then Vannak jumps
like
up.
She cleared out the horde, and then he just boop, boop, boop. He just respawns next to her.
But yeah, she was a total badass in that scene, just like taking on that. I mean, we didn't see pistols. A lot of like enemies and stuff. But with the dual pistols, she just ran in and then like carries Vannak's body out. Then she gets absolutely nailed. We don't really see what hit her or where she got hit, but we hear her scream, which was like piercing. And then I thought she was dead then as well. I was like, geez, like what's happening? I thought she died twice in the opening like 3 minutes. And then she collapses on the ship, and obviously they were able to get out at least. But I mean, that was intense. I was like, damn, because they just killed off Vannak in the last episode. I thought like are they killing Riz like right away? But fortunately, she does survive, but she's not looking so hot. And then Chief is on the ship, and they start escaping, and he obviously like. He's very injured, and he's kind of in and out of consciousness, and he has some flashbacks which are very interesting and opens up one of our big early talking points. He has flashbacks of the operation where they took Cortana out, and it's kind of hinted at throughout the rest of the episode that maybe Chief was conscious throughout that whole thing. We see him, we see those shots of him where he's like completely, his eyes are open and he like sheds a tear and things like that. So maybe he kind of heard everything, but is struggling to remember all of it, because we did get to see the Admiral, what's her name? Parangoski or something?
Parangoski, that sounds right.
Yeah, I think it's Parangoski. She has some demands for Cortana. She says, I need you to do something in exchange for saving Chief's life. What do we think? And I want us to start talking about this as our big talking point to open this up. What do we think she means by that? What does she want from Cortana?
I would think they're helping with Ackerson. Like, I will save John for you. However, you have to help us by just doing these simulations to find out if we can save Reach.
Do you think it's that simple, though?
It could have been that, or maybe the other thing was giving data for the next Spartan training program to train the next set of Spartans.
I feel like Ackerson would have kept Cortana then. Because he gave Cortana up, he left her behind on Reach as well.
But what if he got everything he needed from her already?
Well, I feel like no matter what, Cortana would have had vital information of like Halsey's that the Admiral would have wanted, and that to me speaks either to just intelligence or at least the Spartan training program and how they made the Spartans so they can go, how Halsey made the Spartans so that they can start their own Spartan program essentially, which obviously that kind of comes to fruition later on.
Yeah.
I think there's more there. I think that
there could be, sure.
Karen Goski, I think that she's got something else in mind. I mean, we get to see what Cortana's not doing with McKay and everyone. I think maybe that's got something to do with it. I think maybe the Halo in general's got something to do with it. I don't know. It's interesting. I didn't really explain it. It's kind of one of those threads that they just opened up, and I don't know. I really feel like there's something.
Yeah, that could be part of it, where now Cortana's playing into this notion of leading the Covenant to Halo, to some means, to some end, where it might help the humans, the UNSC, find Halo as well.
It's all very interesting.
I don't think the only people want anything to do with Halo, especially because like it's only Halsey that really wants it. Halsey wants it to like evolve humans into whatever the fucking piece of shit.
Do they even believe it exists though? Is it like, does everyone know that it exists and that it is out there?
I think
because maybe they think it's just some kind of like myth or just like a tale.
Well, if we're going off how Atkinson treated Chief in the first few episodes, he could just think, oh no, he was just Delulu. He doesn't know what he saw, so Halo is just a fantasy that doesn't exist.
But Halsey clearly thinks it's important and wants something to do with it. And she even says in those earlier minutes of the show where she's talking to John and saying that, like, you know, his destiny is kind of like intertwined with the Halo, and it's vital that they find the Halo, even though they don't really know what it is. She thinks it's important that they find it.
So talking about McKay, we got a very interesting scene next where McKay on her ship with the Arbiter are flying away from Reach, and she watches as Reach is destroyed. We get to see that big blue laser, obviously, as they're glassing the planet, and she cries. Why is she crying?
Because she's a little bitch.
She's a lunatic.
She's obviously playing some different aspects here because she knows, like, she talks about it with the Arbiter a bit, where I think she's ultimately trying to just she's not working with the Covenant. I don't think she's working with the Covenant at this point. I think she's trying to get meet her own goals of getting to the Halo for different reasons. And she was truly upset to watch the planet of Reach get destroyed.
Absolutely.
Like, she was upset to see her fellow human beings being, massacred.
Do you think that like she wants to find the Halo and use it to like just completely have universal peace? So she'll like destroy the sort of the Spartans and all the military forces of the humans, but then do the same for the Covenant as well, and kind of just say, if you all don't stop fighting, I'm just gonna Halo everyone.
Well, like the thing is that the Halo is like you can't target specific things; it just like murders everything.
But they also don't know that here in the show at this point. I think they're more just they think they need to get to the Halo. I think if anything, McKay wants to stop anyone from getting to it to use it. I think that's kind of her ultimate goal, is because she knows the Covenant want to use it to be gods. She knows the humans want to get it to be gods, and she doesn't want anyone having that power, essentially. And I think she still looks at herself as like the chosen one, and she needs to safeguard the Halo and the technology.
I mean, it's explained further in the scene where she talks to the Arbiter a little bit, who you were saying earlier, this is the first time he's actually referred to.
They actually refer to him as the Arbiter in the scene. Not only does she, or either he or her, refers to him as the Arbiter, but for me watching it here, there was actually the subtitles when he spoke. It actually referenced him as the Arbiter speaking. It was like Arbiter and then his text, essentially.
Okay. So there we go. It is an Arbiter. We know now. But it was an interesting dialogue exchange between them, because it seems like the Arbiter doubts McKay a little bit. He seems to be not as trusting of her and her abilities. And then she says that they can actually use Cortana for information and things. And we were talking about this earlier, and I think it's maybe time to give up on Cortana going back to her season 1 self, her season 1 look. I'm so bleak.
Yeah.
It was never gonna happen.
Yeah, I'm so sad.
Well, like, she'll probably change again each season. And I was saying before too that I think this version of Cortana actually kind of looks more like OG Cortana, like the old Cortana. So it's like, okay, I mean, if they change her look every season just to play around with it, because they literally did that in the video games, like, okay, that's fine. They're kind of like going meta with that.
Interesting. But we do see in the scene that McKay wants to use Cortana for information, because she could know lots of stuff. I mean, it's kind of alluded to that Cortana might know about the Halo, or about Halo, which is pretty interesting. This whole scene, though, the way that kind of McKay's actress portrays this is it kind of seems like she has something else in mind in terms of what info she wants from Cortana. It's pretty interesting. Like McKay's character is like really developing in a different way than she was in the first season. She very much seemed like she was aligned with the Covenant, and she was like, I'm going to help them because she hates humans and blah, blah, blah. But she's showing a completely different side. I wonder if her death at the end of season 1 has maybe changed her in some way. And maybe the Covenant were just kind of like, oh, we're done with you, whatever. And now she's like, oh, you want to do me like that?
I think it has a lot to do with the scene that will not be mentioned of her having feelings for Chief, and like how she seemed to have a bit of a change of mindset after that, because there was the whole thing with her having like the little plasma sword in her fingernail, and then she pulled it out and decided, I'm not going to kill Chief. And there's also the exchange that she has with Arbiter, who like is ripping on her, like, you stopped me from doing my thing. He's like, that was my redemption as the Arbiter. So that was actually what he was set out to do, was kill Chief, and she stopped it. So that's why he's mostly pissed at her.
Yeah.
But also, it's during that rant when he was yelling at her. I think in the subtitles when I went back to watch it, what did he say? You owe your life to me, or something along those lines. Like maybe Arbiter's the one who brought McKay back to try and help him find Chief.
Maybe, I guess there was that moment that he didn't say it in those words, but he said that she lives by his grace.
That one.
That was the words that he said.
So it could be like Arbiter went back, found McKay, healed McKay, didn't tell the hierarchs and the rest of the Covenant. So like maybe it's like a weird thing, like you do what I say, I don't throw you back to like the hierarchs who will just kill you outright now.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to jump ahead a little bit, but that kind of makes sense in the later scene when they're back at High Charity, and she's like, "What are we doing here?" It means it seems like she hadn't been back since, so maybe you're onto something with that.
Interesting. Well, we'll get to that because that scene's got a whole bunch of other stuff to get through as well. So before we jump ahead to that, we get back to Chief, and Chief is healing from his wounds. He obviously got just annihilated in the battle on Reach, and he gets off the table, and he's hurt real bad. Like he actually needs to like support himself to get up, and he's like really, really fucked up. And he kind of seems to, he looks over at Riz, and he kind of seems to show a little bit of remorse for pushing her as much as he did earlier in the season. Remember, after Riz was, injured at the end of season 1, she was then pushed straight back into training, and then, ate shit when she fell down that waterfall. So like Chief seems to kind of feel a little bit remorseful. One criticism I'd have on the episode is it seems like Chief tonally seems to flip-flop quite a lot. Like he kind of shows remorse, for the way he treated Riz now, and then all of a sudden he's cold and angry again. Like he kind of just seemed emotionally all over the place at times. I mean, it kind of works if you're trying to play it as like he's a little bit unstable, but it just kind of, it seemed to change quite a lot.
I would say it's probably that he is unstable, because one, he just went through full on like however long that fight was, and just like stoic like mission. But then he sees one of his best friend die. Then he doesn't know where Kai is. He probably assumes Kai is dead. And then he sees Riz on the verge of death. So maybe like, because he hasn't really experienced emotions for long, maybe all of this like death and grief and all that stuff and losing a whole planet is just kind of like fucking him up in like a massive way. So that's why he's like just bouncing like between different emotions. Plus there's Halsey again. We know he doesn't like Halsey. Maybe it's just like everything.
A lot of things going through his mind. Yeah.
Yeah.
In that conversation, in that scene with Halsey, he also says, acknowledges that the Spartans now have free will, so they can kind of choose how they make decisions. So instead of like for Riz, instead of saying, okay, Vanak's lost, let's get out of here, that would have been the smart choice. But the empathetic choice, the emotional choice was leave no man behind, or at least let's get his body so we can give him, a proper send off kind of thing. So it's interesting. Like they dived a little bit into the emotional sort of psychology of the Spartans in season 1, and they are doubling down on it in season 2 so far, and it's great. I'm loving it.
With the machines, what are your machine stuff? It just reminds me again of Halo 4, because again that was the big talking point between like him and Cortana. It's just like, who's the machine? Spartan machines, AI's machines. So it's just, I keep seeing those little things throughout like this entire season specifically. I'm just like, so this is just, you really are just riffing on 4 and 5, aren't you? and maybe a bit of influence, but I haven't played, so I don't know. But it's just they obviously had that story they wanted to tell initially, but they just couldn't, and now they're just like, oh, this is now what we can do, and yeah, I keep seeing it. Whether it's a good thing or a bad thing depends if you like those games.
Fair enough. Well, in that conversation as well, Chief does also acknowledge that Oni left him for dead. He very much says like, okay, well, there's no hiding it. They absolutely just abandoned us. So it's going to be really interesting to see. They'll obviously be amping it up for later on in the season, but it's going to be really interesting to see when they confront. When Chief confronts Akison and Oni and everyone there, and it's still kind of asking the question, like Chief is thinking, "Where's Kai?" Obviously Kai was on the planet. She must be dead. That's kind of what they know of Kai. And obviously we kind of we find out what happened to Kai, which we'll get into later. But that's going to be interesting as well. When Chief and Kai come face to face, it's going to be good. Damn traitor. But we also learned that Chief has been out for 2 days. He was put into a coma because he was really, really badly injured. And there was a really interesting part here as well where he says he could have stopped them. I'm assuming he means Oni and Akison. He kind of is like almost like he's like falling unconscious, but he says he could have stopped them if he had his armor. And then he says, if she was with me.
Obviously
referring to Cortana.
I think he was just saying like
yes.
If he had his armor and Cortana and everything, he probably thinks to himself he could have saved the planet. Because in his mind, and it's because again back on his like mental state, he's probably like thinking, I'm the Master Chief, I'm supposed to be the unkillable badass who like just saves everyone. So I think he's going, if only didn't leave and I had my suit, I still had Cortana, either I could have used her help or she could have taken over again to just go killing mode and just murder everything.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was quite interesting where he said he could have stopped them. I was thinking like, ooh, who does he mean? Does he mean Oni? He could have stopped them from abandoning everyone? Or does he mean he could have stopped the whole freaking Covenant? So maybe he's feeling grief of Reach fell and it's kind of he feels like, it's my fault kind of thing. So they're doing, again, they just continue to do interesting things with Chief and I'm all for it.
Well, they also link back to that later on. Just quick jump at when there's he sees a poster of himself join his fight. And then he just stares at it and you're just like, this is So he does blame himself because he probably thinks, he failed because he didn't have all of these tools, I guess.
Yeah, it's a lot darker. Season 2, it's a lot darker, but it's getting really, really good. Interesting. Halsey says that they need to hide away and sort of come up with a plan. She didn't really say what they wanted to do. Did she have a plan in mind?
She wants to hide out from the Covenant for a bit, hide out from Oni, because if Oni find Chief is still alive, that's not going to be good for them. So I think, she just wants to lay low and then slowly convince Chief, hey, this Halo thing's pretty cool, am I right, guys? Let's just, go over there.
Yeah, we should check it out. Anyway, so moving on, we are back with McKay, and she has a nice, interesting little scene with Cortana. I thought it was quite funny how she tries to call on Cortana, and she starts saying some things. Yeah, and then Cortana's like, you can just press the button. And she's just behind her.
Quickly, before we get into that, the little device that's Cortana's in, do you think they're now going to go do the game thing and just have it go into Chief's helmet?
Could be.
I think so.
I would like that, honestly. Just have it.
I think
he gets it and just pops it in.
But we have a little scene where McKay and Cortana were talking, and Cortana says her and Chief worked together, but she kind of hesitates when she explains their relationship. So it feels like she's kind of hiding things from McKay. And Cortana speaks the language.
Yeah, she speaks in Haley.
I like the clap back though. Like as soon as McKay was getting angry and speaking, saying Haley, Cortana's just I understand what you're saying.
You got no power. Bye.
Oh, it was great. It was kind of an interesting scene setting up their story for a little bit later. But McKay has a really interesting line at the end of the scene where she says, there are all kinds of prisons. And that is really interesting because she could be referring to herself being a prisoner of the Covenant still. She could be a prisoner of the Arbiter, like we were kind of referring to earlier. And that's a lot of different characters kind of relate to that line as well. I feel like Chief's in his own prison, and Riz and the other Spartans are in their own prison of like, how do I get out of the Spartan mold and things. So it's something I was gonna remark on later, but I feel like this episode had so many great lines of dialogue, just so many. I mean, I keep mentioning them as we go through, but it's just really, really cool lines of dialogue in this episode.
I thought of like, instead of like, being literal like prisoner of like Covenant, UNSC, whatever, I thought it was like more like a prisoner of your own mind, or like prisoner of death sort of deal, because like technically she died, but then she's not dead, so she like trapped in between like a whatever. I don't know, there's probably like way more layers to it.
Right, then we move back to the group with Chief and everyone, and Quan and Chief see each other. I think Chief wakes up and Quan is there. They see each other for the first time since episode 3 of season 1.
It's been a while for sure.
It's been a very long time. And I thought that was interesting, is that they kind of like were very cold and distant with each other. And I was like, rightly so. They barely know each other. I mean, they literally like they spent like 17 minutes of screen time together in season 1.
Yeah. Not even.
Did you guys see the interaction of them seeing each other again going differently? I thought it was going to be like, I don't know, Quan being like, "Oh, Master Chief, so good to see you."
I wasn't surprised, honestly. I thought that made perfect sense. They were just kind of like cold and distant.
Chief is in a bad place, so it makes sense.
Like it's like you try to like, you're not dead. Nice, good job for not dying.
Nice.
Thanks you too.
The only thing I could make sense out of it was a bit of a flip flop from the first time they met, where she wakes up on the Pelican injured, and he was kind of like watching over her. Now it's the other way around a little bit. Yeah, it's kind of like a little bit of a symmetry there, but otherwise nothing special.
Well, in that previous scene with Halsey and Chief, we've got to mention Halsey gave him that, I guess, some kind of anesthesia or something to put him down again, just so he can rest a little bit more. So he's been out for another day. So it's now been about 3 days after the events of last week's episode, and they are heading to Aaria. I wanted to ask, is it Aaria? I assume that's how you pronounce it. I wanted to ask, is Aaria a big location in Halo at all?
I don't think it's not familiar to me. It's not. If it is a part of the Halo universe, it's a smaller portion of it. Just like Madrigal in the first season, that's like it's in the lore, but it's a very small part of it.
It's like a deep cut sort of deal. Like you have to like read like 5 different books, and even then, it's like a sentence,
it's like a passing reference in one terminal passage or something.
Yeah. Well, we do learn that we're heading to Aaria. I thought Aaria was really cool as like a setting. It was like a really cool sort of sci-fi show kind of setting. Like it was an interesting looking planet where it's kind of like, I love it when they do these with planets and stuff in sci-fi movies and TV shows where it looks like it could be Earth, but there's certain things that are like a little bit different. And not like geographically different or anything, but it just, you get the sense that it's like a different thing. I really like the setting for this episode on Aaria.
It's got that Firefly kind of vibe to it again, where they're at a planet in space. It's the future, but it's extremely rustic, and it's like pilgrims like starting new lives on this planet, and it's all very like low tech. People are just barely getting by. It's almost like old Earth in that respect.
So we learn we're heading to Aaria. Before we get there, Chief goes to Vanak's body, and I don't know if I think there's some dialogue with Quan there, but I thought it was really interesting. And this is where like Chief kind of, like I said, he sort of felt like he was flip-flopping, where he says, this is a body. My friend isn't here. So he's kind of saying like his friend is gone. Like he doesn't care about the body. Like he's just like, whatever, dude. And he's getting like so cold and like brutal.
I think that's just his coping mechanism. Like he's very limited coping mechanism. Like, because he knows Riz is alive still, so he can be a bit more like, oh no, my fault. But with Vanak's dead. He's like, cool, my friend isn't there anymore. It's just his body. But even then, like,
he probably has never actually had to pay respects to a body of a fallen Spartan, really, other than like, canonically, when a Spartan dies, they basically just pop their bodies out into space and like, salute, and then that's it. You move on with your day. So it's like
interesting.
They never really had burial ceremonies in like the books and stuff.
Interesting, because there's something I want to mention on that later. So we'll get back to that one, because okay, this is kind of worms. Anyways, we get to Aaria, and Riz is immediately rushed into surgery. And they kind of are like, you know what, she's going to be all right. Like, it's such a go, so like we do feel like, oh, okay, but she is going to be all right. Something I didn't think about at this point of the episode as well was where Kesler was, because we hadn't seen him yet. We find out then Kesler was on that, well, not find out, but we remember that Kesler was on that transport ship, and then Soren and Lyra had to find out what happened to him, and they question there's a shopkeeper there who obviously has like a manifest or whatever, and they figure out that, you know, Kesler's here somewhere, and they need to go. They sort of set off to go and find their son. Really, I thought a really cool storyline, which we'll get to.
I think that was actually one of the most interesting stories with Soren and Lyra so far in the entire show.
And why? Because Soren is awesome.
I
we'll
thought
get
like
to that.
Slave trade, kid slave trade.
Oh,
that's what I thought when I saw it, and how like he was very cagey about it, and you see Soren and Lyra just be like, "What are you talking about?" Pulls out the book. I'm like, "Oh, so you're just like selling,
especially young ones."
Especially the young ones. They fetch a high price.
And I was like, slave trade, or it's like a sex thing, which is gross, and like it's yeah, I got bad.
Moving on. Moving on. Before we get cancelled, Quan, we go back to Quan, and I have to say, before we even start talking about Quan today, I'm really starting to like her, guys.
Or she's 1,000 times better than she used to be.
But holy, she had a great episode this episode. Oh man. And it starts where she confronts Chief pretty much and says, like, we need to bury Vannak. It's like what you do when you lose people is you bury them. And Chief says, really interesting part of this scene was really interesting because there was a very big binary between Chief and Quan's kind of thoughts around this. Chief says there's no need. Spartans give up their lives when they become one. So it's kind of like I think he says they die when they become a Spartan in the real world. They die.
Essentially, when you think of how I think they were doing it in the show where when they take the kids, they leave the family with a flash clone, and then the flash clone dies. So as far as the family knows, their kid's dead. They're already dead. So
it's really interesting because Chief is like, yeah, I mean, Spartans like give up their lives. Like, it's just, that's a body. Like earlier he says, that's just a body. That's not my friend. My friend is gone, which is really interesting. And then Quan shows a lot more emotion and a lot more grief, you know, about like losing someone that you cared about or something. And I loved the lines here or her dialogue here where she kind of implies that she wished she could have buried her father. You know, she says, I wish I could have put them in the ground. Or she says, you should put them in the ground and leave them there or they will follow you. Which is like really powerful line of dialogue. It was really great. And Quan sort of leaves and she's going to go off and bury Vannak. It's kind of, you think, oh, it's the end of the scene. And then one of the most beautiful things, I love the symbolism in this, is Chief looks up and he sees a bird flying near him.
A bird.
And that happens later in the episode as well, where the bird is still kind of flying around Chief. So it's obviously symbolic about Vanak's love for his birds and things, and it's following him like grief. Where, you know, Quan says, put them in the ground, leave them there, or they will follow you. And I was like, oh, the symbolism, like absolutely beautiful. I love that.
Just touching on Quan and how like we all in agreement she's better this season. I think it's 100% due to the writing, because I think last season she was given a lot of the exposition and like very corny sort of dialogue and storylines, but now she's been given actual good writing and actual good direction. Because the actress was good, but was always hampered by that sort of writing, directing stuff. So I think now that she's given time to actually, you know, put more into it and like the opportunity to do that, I think she'll just get better in a way.
Yeah, I think she's got a lot more opportunity to kind of like let the character breathe a little bit more, especially later on, where she actually has some funny lines, because I don't think Quan has ever had an opportunity to be funny in this show up to this point.
It was always just like plot,
or just like terror. Life is terrible. Misery. Like,
moving on from there, we see Lyra and Soren. They're on like a truck or something. They're getting taken to where, you know, Kesler was last seen or whatever. And Lyra very much confronts Soren about like be serious about this. Like, you just lost people and Reach was just glass, and you're kind of making friends and admiring the scenery, which I thought was quite funny. I'm actually liking Lyra as well. She's growing on me a lot. I like her as like she's very much like this strong female character that's not like there's a lot of strong female characters that get criticized because they're just strong female lead characters that don't really have like any flaws or any kind of emotional growth. But it feels like Lyra is like this strong, powerful female character, but she is a little bit flawed as well. And she's got some like edges to her, which are a little bit rough. I'm really liking her.
I mean,
and
can't not
big,
talk about
big
that
question.
Mic drop moment of her taking her wig off. I was like, whoa!
Big question. I was gonna say big question. Did you guys know she was wearing a wig?
No, I thought it was just a new haircut. However, I feel like she was just covered up because it looked like stress, sort of like alopecia sort of deal. Like maybe like when she pulls her hair, and that's why it looks so crappy.
Yeah, and it all kind of like, oh, okay, it makes sense that was a wig, but I never really thought of it that way either. I thought it was more just her trying to be stylish, and just that's how she did her hair and kind of thing.
But I was like, it kind of came out of nowhere. I was like, she's wearing a wig. Okay, are we reading into this? Maybe it's some kind of sickness. That's
well, it's probably could also deal like with her current mental state because as she was talking, you saying talking to Soren, like take it seriously. Like crap, shit's gone horrible. Lost our son, planet's gone. You lost friends. Like maybe like she's just been so stressed out for the past like 6 or so months, where she's like and which is why like hair is something that goes when you get stressed and like all that stuff. So maybe that was just like her way to try and save face. But I would like to say also with this dialogue exchange, I think Soren has a palate and it's still in there.
Oh, like suppressing his emotions kind of thing.
Because like again, like he's the comedic relief and like he's making friends and stuff. But even later on, whilst you do see some emotion, it's nowhere near what the other Spartans have. Maybe it's either he's gotten used to it or the palate also malfunctions, so it's like only like half working.
Interesting, because he cracks a lot of jokes in the opening scene as well. They're being freaking attacked by Covenant. Chief is like almost dead. Vanak's just died. Keys has just died, and he's like cracking jokes about the big brute that just jumped in. Yeah. It's an interesting theory.
It's either palate or he just copes with grief and stuff with humor, which we all.
Who does that? There's interesting talking points I have about Soren and Spartans and stuff, which we'll get into later, but that's a good jumping off point for that. So moving on to the next scene, we see Riz is awake after her life-saving surgery, and she has an interesting talk here with Halsey about how she was augmented. She says 1 out of 3. Does she say that like 1 out of 3 people survive augmentation?
Yes.
Is that what she was referring to?
Yeah, that's absolutely what she was meaning. Because then she also says like, I wasn't the strongest, I wasn't the best, but I survived.
Yeah, I thought that was quite interesting as well. And I thought that was kind of her referring to Vannak, sort of saying like, Vannak was stronger than me. How did I survive this? And I'm wondering if maybe she felt that guilt of like, Vannak shouldn't have died. It should have been me kind of thing because Vannak is stronger than me. So that's why she went back for him. Kind of interesting. A lot that you can read into that. Just that one little line of dialogue.
I think this scene also showcased how Halsey manipulated them when they were younger. Like, especially like her tone of voice, how she was talking to Riz, and the choice of words. It's like, oh, so this is how you gaslit a bunch of kids to be like, hey, you want to become super soldiers?
Fair enough. Yeah, the way she said that, like, you will have to work hard. Like, she's very direct about it.
Like, also sounds like she's talking to a child.
Yeah. So later on, we get an update for Chief from Halsey, and I thought it was quite interesting. Halsey obviously says to Chief, "Listen, Riz is like, she's not going good, so don't expect her to kind of be back." And then Chief says an interesting line here. He says, "None of us are what they were, and now we're expendable." So obviously, they're not the Spartans, super soldier machines that they once were. Now they're kind of thinking free willing people, and they're kind of changing a little bit. And I wondered, could Akison have seen that and decided to get rid of these Spartans so that he could make better ones?
I'm sure it was probably part of his motive the whole time to initiate his own Spartan program that he was in control of and running.
Because it felt like when he did the original, like, sort of, we're abandoning Reach and we're going to make sure that, like, he kills Cobalt unit, and then he makes sure that Silver Team is there and he wants to eradicate all of them. It felt kind of soft and a bit like really dickish to say, I'm just going to kill the Spartans because of what happened to my sister. Obviously, remembering back then, the sister went through augmentation but didn't survive it. So he kind of has this hatred for Spartans. So my kind of thinking there is maybe he sees that the Spartans are getting free will, and he doesn't want them to have free will because he wants control over them. So that's maybe why he killed the Spartans or left them for dead on Reach.
I think also, like, based off like his book counterpart, I think he just like was jealous of Halsey for like taking all the money away from everything, and how like in the first as well, like they were saying they funneled so much money into the Spartan program, and he could have used, hey, you see, the Spartans are getting free will, they're not doing what they've been told, and use that as the pitch for like Oni to be like, I will do it better. So he's just like using them as like, here's where Halsey messed up. Trust me, guys, I can do it better. Like that sort of.
It's interesting. I mean, either way, he definitely left the Spartans on Reach to be destroyed. So it's going to be, like I said, it's going to be really interesting to see when Chief confronts Ackerson. But anyways, we move on to back to Quan for some of the cooler, better scenes in the episode. Where she's trying to bury Vannak, and as you were saying earlier, she had a little bit of comedy here where she's struggling to like drag him up.
Why are you so big?
And she kind of starts talking to him as well, which I was like, I like that it was kind of like, you know, a little bit of comedy, and we saw another, like you guys were saying, another side of Quan. I feel like she's now, instead of just this one-dimensional character, she actually feels like she's got a lot of personality. And I'm coming around on her. I'm actually all for Kwon this season, especially with her connections to bigger things, which we're going to get into right now. But I liked in the scene how she kind of wanted Vannak to represent the others that she kind of wished that she could bury, which I thought that was like an interesting character moment for her to kind of, she wants closure, and she's kind of telling Chief, like, you need to do this as well so that you can have the closure that I desperately want. I'm going to try and have the closure with this. So I thought it was really, really interesting. And then we get to the interesting stuff where she's interrupted by a religious group. And if that religious group looks familiar at all, that is the group from Sanctuary in episode 1. First thing I thought...
Or at least it's the same sect.
We know.
Same religious group, but it might not be the same people because they all died, basically.
But they kind of look similar. They were wearing the similar.
They're of the same
garb.
Yeah, I mean, they're the
same persuasion. Didn't they walk into lava or something?
They just kind of like walked into the death storm that was coming at them.
Yeah. But anyways, they were on Sanctuary, and they didn't get on any of the rescue ships and stuff to get off. And then obviously Sanctuary was glassed. So we thought, oh, cool. I even remember talking when we were talking with Drew about it. We said, like, is that it? Because the one shaman lady goes up to Chief and she's like, you are the demon, or she says something along those lines. And we were thinking like, oh, is Chief like a chosen one again or whatever? And then she walked off, and we were thinking, oh, it's a MacGuffin. We'll never see that again. And here they are again. Really interesting. I think it's the same group of people, and I think it's really interesting to see where this is going to go. So we'll get into them in a second, but they want to burn Vannak. They want to obviously cremate him, and then Chief gets in there. Obviously, he sees what's going on, and he gets up there. And a really interesting shot here as well is that the blanket gets pulled off of Vannak, and Chief gets a look at his friend. And this is like the first time he's kind of looking at his friend after he's died. And he kind of has this emotional moment where he's like, he's kind of faced with it. And this is where I say it's kind of flip-flopping, because now he's showing a little bit more vulnerability.
I think that's where he finally comes to terms with what's happening. And he just kind of like gives into this notion of like, okay, I need to deal with this rather than just like using the military training of just like, you just push it down. And he finally kind of like has that realization of, this was somebody I cared about, and I need to grieve.
Because I think it's Quan that says it. She says, this isn't a death. This isn't death. This is loss. Which is like, that hit home, because Chief is so used to like seeing the soldiers around him, like the normal soldiers, die, and he's just like, okay, that dude's dead. Moving on. He actually lost, like, someone died who was close to him. So like now it's actually lost. Like this is actually affecting him. Great line of dialogue again. Great dialogue this whole episode through. It's amazing. And then, Dan, you said something earlier, which I want us to touch on here, is that this religious group, the culty people, they want to burn Vannak. And then Chief is kind of like, he almost stops them, but then he looks up and he says he wants to put him in the sky. So do you think he's referring to that they want to just like lift him off into space?
Initial impression was kind of like the they did like the burials at sea, essentially, with Spartans, where they send their bodies out into space when they're like that's just like you would do if you were on a ship in the Navy or something. They send the bodies into the sea. Like that's the style of funeral that you do in space is you shoot the bodies out into space. Whereas maybe he meant burning him. Like, okay, let's burn him and send his ashes into the sky. But essentially, initially, I took it as like he'd rather send him into space unless he sees it as kind of like an equivalent exchange of either burn the body, let the ashes take to the sky, or put his body in space. Kind of like the same thing.
Yeah. Anyways, there was some nice relationship building with Soren and his wife. We didn't actually get to see them together a lot last season because Soren was off with Quan and their weird little crusade that they were on. But I thought it was quite interesting that they eventually find like this place that supposedly has Kesler, and they head in there, and immediately these people are like, no, he's our son now. Like they've just taken him as their own kind of thing. And I thought that was kind of interesting because it was like, they even say at one point as well, they say he may be your son, but he's our family now. And I was like, ooh, that kind of is like interesting. Is Kesler not going to want to go back or something? And it's kind of interesting. And he tells Lyra, okay, listen, give me a sec. I'm going to negotiate. And I think one of Soren's coolest scenes is this negotiation.
I thought he was going to walk in there and just murder everybody.
That's what I was thinking too. But then he was so like passive and chilled.
Very
and he
chill.
says, he was talking about where these people live and how it's like, they kind of have to scavenge to get by and things like that. And he says like, but it's not, it's still close. It's not a bad place to grow up. And he says, I grew up in hell. And he talks about that, which is super interesting.
This is why I also thought like Soren's pellet might still be in there because he's like unreasonably calm for like the situation and is able to just be like, hey, stop, I'm gonna do this thing. And whilst he has emotion, it sort of feels a bit like put on. Like he's might have dropped a mask a bit, but then like he still has that air of like, I'm just trying to persuade you. And that's
a good theory.
Yeah, I took it as like he was being like hard businessman of like, what do I gotta do to get these people to understand and can give back my son? Like he got a little emotional towards the end when he ends that whole speech with like, but in the end, he's still my son. You know.
I thought he was
and then that's
kill him
like
after
we cut
that.
to Lyra after that. And I was waiting for Soren to show up, just like covered in blood. Like, oh, he just destroyed those people.
When they cut back to Lyra, I was waiting for like gunshots or something.
Yeah.
And I was going to be like, oh, I thought he was going to murder them at that point. But we do cut back to Lyra, and she finds a figure in the darkness just ahead of her, and she veers off to go and find Kesler. He's got his Master Chief helmet on, and woo, it's Kesler. And then she takes the helmet off, and it's not Kesler.
Not Kesler.
Bait and switch.
But not Kesler.
No Kesler.
But it's not Kesler. Then we find out that Kesler was taken, and we don't know who at that point, but he's been taken by someone. We'll get back to that because we then go back to the funeral, and they are in fact cremating Vannak. Jeez, dude, names. Come on, bro. Vannak. Poor Vannak, the guy died. I can't even get his name right. But we do see that they're doing the whole, funeral for him, and Halsey actually shares some nice words, which I thought was pretty interesting. She kind of showed a little bit of empathy towards the situation, and then Chief does too. He gives some nice emotional words, just talking about how this was a close personal, friend of his, which I thought this was really good for him. It showed a lot of emotional growth. That he's starting to kind of care for the people around him and things. This is why I said it was kind of flip-flopping, but this I liked. This scene I liked.
One thing I want to say, with Halsey's speech talk and Chief's talk, Halsey very much was saying like, oh, he was great, like his parents would be proud, and it felt more of that manipulative sort of like speech, like being like how she tries to like convey people, oh, I care about them. And like I did what's best for them, and then Chief just jumped in, and was like, yeah, no, his parents think he's dead for like years ago, and that's when he steps in and tells him like this is who he was, which kind of shows like, did Halsey actually care about the other Spartans, or did she actually only care about John? With like the way she never really got to know the others as well, maybe. I think she's playing games as well. Like her and Akasin are both playing different games. Like one's playing chess, one's playing fucking checkers, and I don't know.
Jeez,
I wanted to mention
Tom's got all the theories this episode.
I definitely think no matter what, Halsey's got some sort of ulterior motive going on in the background that we may never know what she's ultimately thinking, because that's Halsey in the games too. Like Halsey was always manipulating things.
R.I.P. Vannak. We love you. I'm so sad. Vannak is so cool, man.
Yeah.
Chief then leaves the funeral, and Halsey kind of follows him, and Chief explains he wants to go after Akasin. He wants to go after Oni. That's what he's thinking. He's got to go and chase him down and make him pay for this, or just confront them. I'm so interested to see how that's going to go when he kind of confronts Akasin and everyone. And Halsey says it's stupid. It's pretty much suicide. And she's very much trying to convince him, like, no, don't go. And this is where she says she didn't choose Chief. She found him, which I thought was quite interesting. She also says, and this is interesting, whatever built the halo left something in Chief. What is our take on that?
I'm gonna link back to Halo 4 again, the Forerunners, and like making like the what's the mantle? Is it the mantle of like responsibility? That's a big thing. It's like the Forerunners controlled the universe, and now like they're given to humans. So maybe in this timeline, they've just put it in Chief that like yes, he will be the leader, sort of deal, or like he's destined to like be able to control the Halos. You meet the librarian character, and then she's just like, yep. So like we're doing this for humans, and then she accelerates Chief's evolution. So maybe they're just like taking it a different way where like Chief is like more evolved, like his DNA. So like maybe that's
I mean, if you tie it into like the books and so on, like he at a young age, John is extremely talented and smart and strong, and like that's why Halsey took him in essentially because of the traits that he had.
So Halsey's pretty much as well saying like you can't go after them because like you're gonna die, like it's a suicide mission kind of thing. And then Chief, with the callback of like what this whole kind of episode was about, he says, "I'm already dead." Which is like, he's obviously talking about how like, you know, there was the Flash clone, and they, you know, when they were taking the Spartans, they were killed. That was brutal. I was like, damn, bro, that was like the perfect thing to say. You know, when you think of the perfect like what is the word? Comeback. You think of the perfect comeback, and then you can just say it like that was, damn, Chief, well said, bro. There's like a mic drop moment.
Can't really. I always think the comeback like 2 or 3 business days after.
That's the problem. That's, you think about it, like as soon as you finish, like as soon as you walk away with the conversation, like, damn, I should have said that. Damn it. Anyways, we move on to, I think, probably the like craziest, just mind f episode scene of the episode, which is when the cult lady. So I've like Googled and researched and whatever. This lady is referred to as the Sanctuary Shaman. Sanctuary meaning the planet Sanctuary. So it's definitely the lady from episode 1 who tells Chief that he's the devil or chosen one. So she speaks to Quan and just kind of starts speaking, and she says she speaks for all planets, and she kind of just vanishes. But so do all of the other cult people. Like all of a sudden Quan is there by herself, and I was like, what the hell? And that was really creepy. And this is where I've got all the questions, and I'm gonna swing it over to Tom, see if we can answer all these questions. I wanted to say, are they from the opening scene in episode 1, which I'm pretty sure they are? Are they magic? Is Quan hallucinating? Is this connected to Chief somehow? The monster is coming is one thing she says, and then just I have a big question that says, is Tom right?
Okay,
is this a flood?
So I still think this is the flood. And specifically when she said she speaks for the planets, I'm like, oh, it's like a hive mind.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I took that as flood too.
Yeah, flood, like a hive, like a grave mind. Like maybe this is like, because all this stuff's happening, like maybe they've changed the flood so a bit more intelligent. It's like, okay, we're just waiting now. And what we thought was like the shaman and stuff is like trying to help stop the flood. Maybe that religious sect is the flood. Like maybe like, because they're also big thing with flood is like mind manipulation, memories, all that fucking hullabaloo. Maybe this is like the way to manipulate to try and free them from the Halo. Maybe like the shaman's like, hey, you need to get to Halo, you need to stop the monster from coming. But then like when they get there, maybe in season 3, it's like, oh lol, JK, it's just a giant grave mine, lol. Get pranked, sucker.
Because she says the monster's coming, and I thought it was really interesting is that Quan then has a flashback
where she's in the rubble and she's drawing like on the cave painting, which I remember looking at that and I was like, it doesn't look like anything, but it's just shapes. When there was like the round shape, somebody was talking about that being like a monitor on the halo. It's like, okay, is it a monitor? Is it the grave mind? There's all these different ways they could go with it. I think that this was more of a hallucination, but it could have been a vision because then she snaps out of it and she's still surrounded by people, including Riz, and Riz is looking at her like, what's happening over here?
Yeah.
But also, no, Riz is the only one looking at her.
True.
Yeah, I was gonna say Riz seemed to notice, but like it was only Riz. Everyone else was just chilled. But everyone else was the cult.
Do you think none of the cult people were actually there then? Only
I think
Quan
they were there.
Oh, don't do this, Dan.
No, I think they were there, but this links into the hive mind thing.
True.
What if they're all just like
they're all just controlled by the grave mind or something?
Yeah. Well,
what if they're actually trying to recruit Quan to be a new grave mind?
Is that how grave minds work?
They try to do it with keys in the video games. They try to make keys a grave mind.
True.
At this point, we get back to McKay. And this is one of the big interesting scenes as well, because she seems to be in a little bit of trouble. They're now back at High Charity. The Arbiters told them after everything that happened in Reach, all of their whole fleet has been recalled back to High Charity. And McKay seems to be in a bit of trouble. And there was some interesting theories about maybe like the High Charity people don't even know that McKay is still alive. Maybe the Arbiter saved her or something. Like there's a lot of interest there because she seems to be pleading with the Arbiter to go against High Charity orders and say like we don't need to bow to them. We can go straight to the Halo. So it's very interesting there. And he's about to end her. He's about to like freaking completely take her out. And then boom, we see Halo. This big vision in the ship.
Like the classic Halo shot of like the ground looking up and seeing the ring wrap around.
Oh, just a great shot. And it's Cortana. Cortana knows what Halo looks like. Why? I feel like that's a big knowledge bomb kind of moment.
True, from his visions.
Yes, she said, visions. Yeah, that's right.
Because remember, it's different in the show where she's part of his brain. So like it can easily just be like, oh, Chief saw that, so like cool.
She can see what Chief saw essentially.
Downloads the memories. But yeah, Cortana saved the hell out of McKay. I think McKay was definitely dead then. And then obviously McKay uses that to manipulate the Arbiter into helping her find Halo. And the Arbiter's like, okay, cool. And he makes a big Yui. And they now setting off to Chaka Yui. And they're now heading off to try and find Arbiter, trying to find Halo. I thought it was quite interesting as well, is that McKay kind of looked over at Cortana, and Cortana was like,
yeah, a little like
I got you.
Thought here. You know how in Halo 2...
Stop with your theories, Tom. I can't deal with anymore.
No, because there's the heretic in Halo 2. Like when you first play as the Arbiter, you, like High Charity says, you need to go take this guy out. What if this Arbiter will become the heretic fill-in? Because he's abandoning the hierarchs. He's going with McKay because he's doing their own thing, saying that the hierarchs are wrong. And the whole thing why they sent Game Arbiter over Heretic was like, hey, he's speaking blasphemy, blah, 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 blah. What if that's what they're doing now in a different way? So we do get OG Arbiter as well.
Because then the new OG Arbiter is the one that goes to stop the current Arbiter who turns into the Heretic.
Yes.
Because the current Arbiter also did mention to McKay, did say in some of his dialogue that she was being blasphemous. Yeah, so that's Tom is the MVP of this episode, guys.
She feels like she feels the role of Guilty Spark of just like putting ideas in this elite's head, and that's when the hierarch's like, nah, okay, we just need to kill them because they're threatening the Great Journey and blah 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 blah.
We then head back to Valeria, and Soren and Lyra are back after their little expedition, and Lyra goes shopping for some tools.
I love this scene.
She is so cool, man. I'm loving Lyra. She's really cool. She goes full Negan and wraps some barbed wire around a baseball bat.
Intimidation techniques.
So great. I absolutely love this. And she obviously did it to get the info that they needed. She's intimidating. That's what I'm talking about. She's like the strong, powerful female character, but like she shows that she's a bit like edgy and rough around the edges. And dude, she's so cool.
I think it just showed the lengths like a mother could go to save that kid. Because she even mentions like, oh yeah, I caused him some discomfort when I cut his hair, so I realized I would do anything to get him back, and I would do anything to hurt the person who took him. And then it's just it's like the change of tone as well. It's like Yeah, right. Wouldn't that be so bad if someone knew about it?
Oh, yeah. So we find out then, we get the information from little shopkeeper. We don't know if his skull was caved in by Lyra, but we find out the UNSC has Kesler. Whatever could they want with him?
A 10-year-old boy?
That is technically an orphan because he was found by himself. What kind of asshole?
I mean, can Spartan augmentation DNA be passed on to kids? Do Spartans ever have kids?
Well,
I mean, not that I know
augmentations, they can happen to anyone. So maybe like a 10-year-old kid's just going to look like a 16-year-old next time we see him.
Dude, Kesler, I don't know. I think he's absolutely going to become a Spartan.
Yeah, there's I feel like there's a high chance of it now that they've mentioned it.
Yeah, I think he'll maybe be sent to the augmentation and maybe we lose Kesler. No, it's too dark. We're moving on.
Can't take
it. Next scene, we see Riz. She's still recovering, and eventually she sort of sits up in her bed and she sees people, the Amish people, outside. And she seems happy and sort of waves. One of them waves at her, and she waves at one of them. And then she has the big scene at the end where she chats to Chief, and she decides that she's going to stay, admitting that her fight is over. And immediately Chief is not accepting it. He's like, this is not happening. Like, stand up now. That's an order. Like, we're getting out of here. And Riz is like, no, dude. She's retiring.
Well, she stands up, but very really labored.
Yeah, I like how Chief is like, stand up, and she's like, let me get my crutches and very cripply stand up real quick. But then another great line of dialogue in this episode. She says to Chief, talking about the grief and things like that, she says to him, make peace with pain before it crushes you.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, dude, this episode has so many great lines of dialogue. And that, like, I don't know if it's mentioned, but that's all the Chief has left. I mean, Silver Team is pretty much his family. I think it's all of this is building up really nicely for him to get Cortana back, because he'll feel completely empty having lost his whole team, and then he'll put the little chip back in and be like, Cortana, she's back. Right. And that's, I think that's pretty much the end of the episode. Nothing else big happened that made us hate the living crap out of a character. No, Kai is alive. And she's joined Ackerson. They're just buddies now. And we are on Onyx, which you guys called, and she is training a whole bunch of new soldiers. Now, I wrote down here soldiers. Were those Spartans?
Spartan 3s.
I was just saying, I'm pretty sure they were all Spartans.
That's a hell of a lot of Spartans.
Well, that's probably what...
I mean, are the Spartan 3s as strong as, like, what is Chief? Is he a Spartan 1 or Spartan 2?
He's a Spartan 2.
Okay, so Spartan 3s, are they as strong as Spartan 2s?
No. Because I think they were augmented later on, and also like not as like invasive. Like,
I forget what the details are, but they weren't as powerful as 2s, but they also had a higher like expectancy to live augmentation because of it. So there's more of them because of it, but they're also not as powerful.
Anyways, that is the episode breakdown of episode 5. It's actually like a slow episode, but it was actually jam-packed. There was a lot of stuff that was kind of going on in this episode. A lot of cool stuff happening. A lot of cool stuff developing. Blood. So what do we think of this episode? Let's dive straight into our scoreboard. Alrighty, so scoreboard for episode 5, season 2 Halo. I went first last time, so one of y'all.
I'll start this time and say that I really enjoyed this episode. There was a lot of good stuff that happened. It was really long. Had some really cool moments with a lot of the characters that I'm starting to grow on. Like, I'm liking what's going on with Quan. I like her growth. I like Soren and Lyra's growth. I like everything that happened with Chief, and the fact that they did this whole tribute with Vannak, and like Riz basically saying like, yep, I'm done. My time is up. I'm moving on to I'm going to go be an Amish person with these people on this planet. So I think it is a little bit of a slower episode, but I think it did a lot of good things. So I'm landing more into like a 7.5, I think, as far as like, I kind of wanted to go a little higher, but at the same time, it's kind of like, all right, well, yeah, it's So it's a good episode. It's good.
I would agree that it was good. Because not every episode needs to be like, bombastic explosions, kill. Yeah. Again, like Dan, I enjoyed a lot of the character building they did. There was lots of things where they set up like possible theories, which is why I had so many. And yeah, I think it was a good sort of like rest episode before I'm assuming the next 3 are going to be just balls to the wall of just like that stuff. Little bummed that we're probably not going to see Reach again, especially like all the marketing was like you thought like it'd be the entirety of like entire Reach thing.
That was kind of my big detriment that I kind of skipped over. Was I'm upset that Reach is done already. Like I was expecting the whole season to be like the last end of the show. The last 4 episodes were going to be all Reach battle, just battling for Reach. So I'm a little eh.
Yeah, I thought they'd have like separate battles per episode, but I think they're trying to cram in a bunch of enough lore and like set up for a hopeful season 3 if they get it. Like they're hoping for that. But in the end, I'd probably give it 7 because good episode, lots of fun stuff, interesting character development, but like nothing like overtly amazing, but still good.
Still too soon on the flood, and I'm sad that Reach is already like it's over, it's gone, bye, done.
Bye Reach. Well, for me, I have to say I really enjoyed this episode because it's a great episode to have after like you have like this big action-packed emotional episode. It's a nice episode to have to kind of slow it down. I'm a big fan of pacing in movies and TV shows and whatever, especially TV shows where they can kind of slow it down for an episode and then like start building it back up again. So I like that this was a bit of a slower episode. I feel like they opened up a whole bunch more story elements and things like that. I really love the symbolism of Vanak's tribute and like the bird that chases Chief and the stuff with Quan and talking about how she wanted to bury people and now she gets to bury Vannak. I liked all of that. Soren, and I was going to knock this episode down because I was like, why are they trying to find Kesler? What happened to Kesler? Not realizing that I just didn't pay attention and didn't realize that Kesler was put on a transport ship 2 episodes ago. So now that that's explained and it is actually part of the show, I'm not going to knock it down for that. And this episode, I feel like did a great job. It was a great character-centric episode and we got to see some good character moments, some good character growth moments, and I love these kinds of slow symbolic type of episodes. So for me, I give this episode an 8 out of 10. Really like it as one of those slow it down just to pick it up. And as Tom said, I think that the next couple of episodes are going to be balls to the walls. I don't think next episode is going to be action packed. I believe next episode is titled Onyx, so I think that a majority of the episode will be maybe Chief making his way to them or something, but I think we'll get a long episode to explain what Akison and Kai have been up to. But then the last 2 episodes, I think, are going to get pretty crazy. But big things I liked about this episode. Quan is interesting. Finally. She's interesting. Maki. I'm going to just practice all these names for a week. McKay is great. She's interesting. Her character's getting really cool. I like that she's kind of moving away from the Covenant. She looks like a traitor. Like I was kind of theorizing. And I really like it, and I'm very excited for this. I feel like one thing I wanted to say, I feel like this show's really hitting its stride as a series. Season 1 was kind of all over the place at times. I feel like they really have a purpose now. They know what they're trying to do with the show, and they're doing it, and they're really hitting their stride. I'm sure they're going to get a season 3 because this show is getting really good. I'm very excited about it. That is episode 4 of our Watching Now podcast here for Halo season 2. That was episode 5. It's weird because we got 2 episodes in the first drop, so like we're on episode 4, but it's actually episode 5. Anyways, we'll be back next weekend on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. PST, I believe.
Yes.
Jeez, host of the show. Look at me. I don't even pay attention to the show. I don't even know what I'm doing here, guys. But we are getting by. So please join us next week. We'll be over on YouTube, 2 p.m. PST. On the live premiere, so you can live chat with us and have some fun. Also, head on over to CouchSoup.com where you can check out a whole bunch of other cool stuff. Become a member because, hey, why not? You can support independent creators like ourselves and some of the great people we have working behind the scenes at CouchSoup. Also, anything else you want to check out, go and check out our YouTube channel. We got some really cool stuff. And yeah, as for us, we will see you next week. See you then, Spartans.
What?
Fuck Kai.
Great mind.
And
Space
we
Amish.
love the Space Amish. Yes.
Space Amish.
Dead Bod Spartan.
That was fun. That was fun. Space Amish. Great mind.
What?